Good evening and welcome to the 35th episode of Unstoppable Overcomers. I'm super excited. I'm super excited to have this amazing lady over here on my left, Emily Harman, on the show this evening. And I'm super excited to have our guests that have already joined us. Tim's a little bit like, let's go get the show on the road. And so happy that he's excited to be here. We're excited to have him. And I'm super excited to have a retired naval officer on my show. Like, that is amazing.
I'm excited to be here. And Tim, if you knew what I just went through to get here, you'd appreciate it.
It was hilarious
today, and it didn't really work in this one room, so I had to switch. Now I'm in a guest bedroom, and it was just like we had 20 seconds to spare.
It was wonderful seeing her run around like that. Good evening, Inger.
Hi, Inger.
Oh, amazing. Well, Emily, tell us a little bit about your overcoming story and we'll just go from there.
Okay, a little bit about my overcoming story. I think it pretty much started when I was a plebe at the Naval Academy. That's when you're a freshman. And I didn't realize this, but my dad told me the other day that in the first scrimmage, I hurt my knee and was out of commission with 3 seconds left in the last scrimmage before the regular season started. And I was a freshman. And my dad told me that the game before that, I had scored like 29 points. So I think I was going to be like starting off to a really good year as a freshman until boom, I tore my anterior cruciate ligament. I heard it pop, and I was in a cast a plaster cast back then from my toe to my hip for 7 weeks. And then when that cast came off, my leg was about as big as my arm, and I was in a knee brace. And it's just, your freshman year is hard enough already. I mean, you have to have read 2 articles on the front page and be conversant. An article on the sports page. You have to know the menu for morning meal and the next meal, noon meal. You have to know all the sports that are happening during the day, during that day or evening at the Naval Academy. You have to know how many days left until the Army-Navy football game. You have to know so many rates about airplanes and ships. And there's just so much you have to know on top of 20 to 21 hours of coursework. And so add a cast. I don't know why I didn't quit, but I didn't. And so that was my first thing, my first story of overcoming. I tore my other knee right before my senior year too. So that was kind of challenging. And then being in the 6th class of women was challenging. People would walk around the Naval Academy and say, the tourists, and say, there's one. They point at us because there were so few of us there. And then just some other things hi Cherie, some other things that I've been through in my life. I was married to my children's father was verbally abusive to me and the children, and that caused a lot of mixed emotions and feelings. When he passed away 2 years ago, December 11th is the 2-year anniversary. And then just being a single parent is challenging, as well as a single parent of, a son who started drinking at age 13 and finally stopped at age 23, and just drinking and doing drugs and the challenges that brought. And then my daughter has some invisible illnesses, which are very challenging for her, and anxiety. So, just doing all that while working and it was challenging. And actually, I was just talking to a coach the other day, and I said, sometimes when coaches help you figure out these recurring patterns in your life, and I know that there's an underlying pattern in that I never quite get fully organized. I stop when I'm like 80 to 90%. And I think the reason that we came up with this is because my life has kind of been just go, go, go and trauma. And now that I don't have that in my life as much, it's leaving my comfort zone to have my condo perfectly neat and everything organized. It's like scary to me, which is weird. But I think that's the issue, is that I'm not used to a life without trauma in it.
Wow. That actually just really resonated with me. Because it's like you said, it's like one thing for me anyways, it's been one thing after another as far back as I can remember. And even right now, we have some family stuff going on, even after my dad's death. And I'm like, when does this stop? Like, does it ever
Yeah.
stop?
But
And
when
I'm
it stops
thinking,
and you get uncomfortable, you're waiting. Yeah.
yeah. And I'm like, but I seriously, I could have finished out the rest of the year without having what I'm having to deal with now. And, having to keep some of it a secret from family members until someone else shares, because it's not my story. And I
Mhm.
promised I wouldn't share it. But I'm just like, can we have at least a month where there's nothing? And especially this close to Christmas, considering we knew Christmas is going to be a little bit difficult. So let's just add more to it.
And how do you know when to share something like when it's not your story? Because, for example, let's say that there was something in my family that I wanted to share with one of my kids, and it impacted me a lot, but it's not my story.
Well,
It's
if
still part of my story.
yeah, okay, so I'm saying, okay, so this is just what I'm talking about is like really fresh, really new. Like I just found out about 8 o'clock last night.
Mhm.
So, but I'm giving this person a week to tell the right person that needs to be told what's going on. But if I know in my family, like there's some things I would never put on there ever. And then there's some things that I think if it would benefit my child or benefit my nephews or benefit my stepson, I definitely would tell them, even though it wasn't my story. Um,
Mhm. Yeah,
but
it
I
wouldn't
guess,
benefit my daughter to say it. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. She hasn't said it publicly, so then I don't share it, but it's something that really impacted me too.
right. Well, and I think, I mean, there's lots of stuff that goes on in our lives that is very impactful and that could help. And um, I just know that, I don't know. I guess for me, majority of my life is an open book, but there's certain things that, if I know it's going to be detrimental to that person, that I would never share it.
I'm going to ask her when I go visit her because it's something that I feel like I want to talk about. That incident brought on all of her invisible illnesses.
Oh,
Mm, yeah. So
wow.
I'm gonna
Maybe that's something to talk with her and then see
I
if
will
she's
talk with
willing to
her.
share it.
Yeah. And it's just because for mom, it was something that was really hard. So it's part of
Right.
my story too, I guess, is what I'll talk with her. We're really close. I'll talk with her.
I'm just going to get quickly to the comments here. Lygia, thanks for being here. We love you. Bruce, thank you. They're just talking. Hey, Russ, good to see
Hey,
you for the second time today.
I saw your interview when I was in the dentist chair.
All right. So she was listening to us as she was going through a painful experience.
Yeah.
I think to get something just came to mind. So I had not told my parents I was writing my book until it was written. And then my editor's like, well, you better get permission, especially from your mom, because there
Yeah.
was some stuff I had put in there. And so I said to my mom, by the way, this is what I did. This is what I put in there. And I did it because I believe that it could benefit other people. It could help other people. And that's it wasn't to shame you, it wasn't to humiliate you. Because there's nothing in there shameful or humiliating. It's just sharing my thoughts, my feelings, about my childhood and about growing up in a home where there was a lot of illness and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So
I I have
once
talked to my children about what I say about their dad because they know he was verbally abusive. And I don't dwell on that and I don't get into the story, but I share it. And they know that he
right,
was, and then also he's their dad.
right. Well, and I believe by sharing your story, number one, it gets it out there. So if you and I say this to everything, if you bring darkness or light into the darkness, it just like they can't hold it against you.
That's right.
And that's mainly why I decided to be verbal about my abuse and it was mentally and verbal, same thing. And I just like, I've never mentioned the person's real name ever, either on the book or on air. Um, but and I've had his sisters come to me and say, "Hey, I'm really sorry, my brother did
Yeah.
that to you." And but in the same sense, I believe that certain, like, it needs to be heard, because working in a women's shelter, I didn't I was a bookkeeper in the women's shelter, so I wasn't working directly with the women, which I really wish that I would have been. Um, because it got really real for me when I come back from the bank and I happened to see the police cruiser in the driveway, which was nothing new. But I saw the woman walking out, and I was devastated. Like, she had two black eyes, her hands in a sling, and they were taking her to the hospital to go process her.
Mm.
And she was in a bad shape, and it really got real to me at that moment, exactly who we were working for. um, helping these women try to, number one, stay in a safe place, number two, help them to get past their emotional and their healings, and their scars, and things like that. And to me, that in that moment, it changed me. And then I had this other woman that was in there. She was an older woman. She had diabetes really bad, and she kind of reminded me of my mom a little bit. So I wasn't supposed to, but I would sneak back once in a while and go talk to her to make sure she was all right, and things like that. And she just reminded me so much of my mom. And so I had built a relationship with her. And it's through those times, and hearing people's stories. Like, it even impacted me back then to listen to people's stories.
Yeah. And, someone would say, like, no one at work would really know what I was going through. I was like two different people. At work, I was a contracting officer. I was buying airplanes for the Navy. I was negotiating and awarding contracts for the Navy. And then at home, I, you know, got yelled at for loading the dishwasher wrong or for, whatever. And I tried and tried, and I went to counseling, and I went, and he said it was me that needed to change, and if you hadn't said this or done that. And I really loved him. And then I finally got the courage to leave, because I learned that the verbal abuser behaves similar to someone who punches you. Nobody can see the scars, though. No, I don't go into work with bruises on my arm, but they're in my heart. And um, the tension starts to build, and things are going okay for a while. There's a cycle of abuse. Things go for there. It's like, wow, he didn't yell at me for that. That's pretty good, because I can get called a CUNT for putting change in his hand the wrong way. We were going through a toll. So
Right.
you're always on edge, never knowing what you're going to do wrong. And
Hmm.
and then it's like, wow, he didn't react that way. And maybe he is changing. This is
Yeah.
awesome, because I want to stay with him and the kids. He's their dad.
Right.
And then the tension builds and builds and builds. And then there's usually the person being abused does something unconsciously, or just something happens to have the big blow up again. And then you start all over again. And it took me 7 years to leave. And what enabled me to leave was seeing the abuse, seeing my kids, feeling, knowing what was happening, and also themselves not being treated very well. And so I left, and I was very fortunate I could leave, because I had my own job, I had money, I could do that. And there's some people, and then I had really strong family support. If anyone watches the show Made on Netflix, that show shows you how hard it is for somebody to leave, especially when you don't have family and to support you. So I left, and then I just stayed busy, because I was a single parent. I had a busy job, stayed busy, and I never really felt my feelings. And one of my guests said, when you shove your feelings to the basement, they lift weights. And it wasn't until he got sick in July of 2019, and then became paralyzed 2 weeks later, and then died in December. But, I really started, to process all those feelings, and there was just mixed emotions over everything. And I did get, I helped take care of him a lot when he was sick, and I did get closure at the end. I mean, basically, it was December 8th. He died on the 11th, and I said, because the 6th is when we got married. I said, a couple of nights ago, that would have been our whatever 28th or 30th wedding anniversary, 28th, I think. And he was laying in bed, and he just went, he shook his head and turned away from me and said, "I'm sorry." So that's the closure I got.
You broke up right when you said that.
He said, "I'm sorry."
Oh, well, I'm glad you got your story. I'm really glad that you were able to get that closure.
Yeah.
Um, I'm just going to go to the comments for 1 minute, and then I have a question for you. Christine says, always being relied upon and always feeling that you have to fix it. Exactly. That's the situation I'm in right now, because as the oldest child, oldest grandchild, everybody comes to me to fix their problems. They don't include me until the crap hits the fan, pardon my language. And then they call the sister, the aunt, the daughter, the granddaughter, and I'm expected to fix it. Well, this time, Auntie's saying, not my monkey, not my circus. You created the problem. You are now to fix the problem.
Yeah. You can change that. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Thanks, Brian. We come to feel comfortable to share publicly at our own time.
Hmm.
Exactly. Yes.
Thank you, everybody, for the comments. Yeah, Ingor. Yeah, my son did too. He told my son, "I'm sorry I wasn't there when you needed me," and my daughter did too. So it was really hard to see somebody pass away, and that's why I coach on, creating a life that you love living now. Don't wait.
Exactly. Life is short, people. If this year hasn't taught me that, I don't know what will. It's wow. So I have a question, and
Hmm.
you don't have to answer this if you don't want to. But being in the Navy and being a naval officer, and then coming home to the abuse, and nobody quite knowing what's happening back at base. Did you? How did that play in? Like, did you feel like, because okay, so in my mind, okay, Navy, I know you really have to go through like one heck of a boot camp, and you're like mentally, physically, everything tough in the Army, Navy, right? And then you have this going on at home. And was there thoughts of like that you were hiding it because you didn't want people to know? Like, I'm not
Yeah.
saying shame, but like, what were your feelings and thoughts? Like, it's almost like, were you at some point thinking you were kind of like leading a double life,
Well,
if that makes sense?
yeah. And at the time, I was in the Navy Reserves. So I was actually a civilian full time at that time. But I did drill. I was in the Navy Reserves, and he was in the Army Reserves. So he drilled. He ended up becoming a colonel in the reserves. I got out because I couldn't. I was tired of missing the kids' soccer games, and sometimes we had drill on the same weekend, and it was too much with the marriage going south and everything. So it's hard for me to go back and remember what I was thinking and how I felt. I had some close friends that I did confide in, but you kind of start to feel like maybe you're going crazy because he tells you it's you.
Mm-hmm.
And and um and and he's the father of your kids, and you know you love him. And I think, all right, I'll share this. I think another reason why I had low self-esteem and stayed with him is because I had been married once before, and I was not faithful. And I think that I felt bad about myself from that. Never again did I ever do something like that. But I felt bad about myself for that. So I did everything I could do to try to make this marriage work. I
Right,
think that's another reason why I put up with it for that long,
right,
because I felt I had low self-esteem for what I had done.
right. And that, you know, being in a similar situation, I totally get how it is, because one day it could be fine and you're like, oh my gosh, it's the guy that I fell in love with. And
Yeah.
you know, that could go on for a week or two, and then all of a
Mhm.
sudden it's like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, Dr.
All of a
Jekyll,
sudden, I'm in the
Mr.
car,
Hyde.
once I was driving home. I had both of my kids. I went to visit my parents. My daughter was an infant, and my son was, maybe 3, and the tire blew off the car, and I pulled over, and luckily I was able to control the car. I pulled over, I got it fixed. When I came home, he was pissed at me. Like, what the heck? That wasn't my fault.
Right.
That wasn't my fault that the tire blew off the car. I had our kids in the car. It's not my fault. I would get yelled at for, like, we were driving to Virginia and the kids were in the back seat, and we were in Fredericksburg, and he's like, "Where do you want to stop to eat?" Because he wanted to get in whichever lane. And I didn't know Fredericksburg that well. I'm like, I don't know. We'll just see it. Well, he just screaming at me. What do you do?
Wow.
And then tailing other cars. So, and it's like, do you speak up or not when he's getting so close to other cars and we're in the car and my kids
Mm-hmm.
are in the back seat?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, I don't know what I was thinking back then, but I think that it had to do with, it definitely had to do with my self-esteem.
Stacy's joining us, and she said that she survived 8 years. Wow. And that's a long time, because like you said, I take full ownership. I Trust me, I am not perfect, and I take ownership of, my bad days, but I'm telling you, they do make you feel like it's all your fault 100% of the
Right.
time. They're complete narcissists, and they really are just like, well, I like, for instance, I was canning. He come home and I was canning, and I was going to do it on the weekend, but I got the free tomatoes on the Wednesday, so I decided to hurry up and just do it. And he freaked out on me because I was doing it on the Wednesday, because I changed my mind and didn't do it on the Saturday. And I
Yeah,
was
you
just
never
like,
know.
I'm like, I'm not asking you for help. What's your problem? I'm just like, I don't understand. So and it's like that all the time, like in and
Well,
out.
yeah. I remember when I went to, because when we were getting this divorce, luckily we worked everything out. We didn't have to go to court. And, but I didn't know that at the time. And I went and saw a psychiatrist and was telling him about what happened, because this guy was going to see the kids and everything. And then I got up to leave, and he's like, when you make your next appointment? I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm not the one that's being like him. He is. And he's like, well, we need to talk to you about why you put up with that. What is it about you that you put up with that? That was kind of eye opening for me, but I didn't really go, because, it was all I could do to take care of the kids, and the way he would handle things too is, all the big decisions would come down to me, because he wouldn't help me make the decisions, and then that way he could criticize the
Hmm.
decisions that I made. So
Oh my
anyway,
gosh.
um,
Emily,
it's
it's like we were in the same relationship, only like years apart. I swear to
yeah,
gosh.
and it's and but then he passed away, and I did not realize all the feelings that I have over that, and I really miss him, and my
Yeah.
kids do too.
Yeah. And that's something else that we have to deal with, because it's funny, because one of my family members was in a physical abusive relationship. I won't say who, but she used to get the crap kicked out of her. I witnessed it a couple times. I was a young kid when it happened, and I witnessed it, and I remember some of it. And he passed away about 8 9 years ago, and to this day she is like, oh, I miss him so badly, and I'm like,
My mom
really?
doesn't understand how I even took care of Bruce and went to his funeral and all that. She doesn't understand. But
Yeah. I like I
sometimes
said,
it's
I
good.
understand, because you did love him. He was you're the father of your children, so he gave you two incredible, beautiful blessings that
Mhm.
no one else can give you. So I do get it. And no one truly, like, it's you, and you shouldn't, be bothered what other
Right.
people say. But I mean, I get it. It's like a codependent thing,
Yeah. And
you
I can
know?
also look at him as a little child, and I know how he was raised. And so I
Right.
know that a lot of his behavior was from anxiety. But back in the early 90s, I don't even know that we used that term. But, I knew that he could get some kind of medicine that would help, but he refused to do it. But whatever. It's made me who I am now, and which is,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's made it all the better because now you help other people, right?
Mhm. Yeah. I
So
love
tell
being.
us a little bit about what you do. And hey, Garen.
Hey, Karen. Yeah, so basically, when I retired from the Navy, working for the Navy as a civilian in 2019, I called my retirement actually a graduation because I'm like, yes, I'm finally like on my own. My kids are grown, they're doing well. I can do what I want to do. And then it took me a while to figure out, well, what is it that I want to do? Because my dreams had become buried under like a mound of responsibilities. I just explained a lot of them. I had not had any time to think about me and what I want.
Yep.
And so I decided, I really wanted to be a podcaster. And the way I decided that is in 2014, when I retired in 2019, is when I went to this event called the World Domination Summit. And it's in Portland, Oregon. You can look it up. A guy named Chris Gillibo puts it on. I've been to 5 of them since. And that was when I really met my tribe. I mean, I think my tribe is more coaches and, people that, these people were I just saw a whole different way of living, people that are
Right.
traveling the world, couch surfing, whereas I just been military and just strict and doing this and this and this. And I really liked that. And that's when I got exposed to podcasts. And then when I was stationed at the Pentagon, I would commute and listen to some podcasts. And I thought, I'm going to start a podcast. And, everyone was telling me what I should do because of my last job. I was the director of the Office of Small Business Programs for the Navy and the Marine Corps. I'm the Secretary of the Navy staff advising, telling the Navy how to set policy for including small businesses in their procurement strategies. And so people thought I should be a government contracting consultant or I should start my own company doing that. And I'm like, I want to do what I want to do. What is that? So podcasting seemed exciting. And so I started my podcast. It's similar to yours. It's called the Onward Podcast. And it features authentic conversations on facing adversity and moving forward. And then what I added later, a couple years later, is and discovering ourselves along the way, because it's through adversity that we really discover who we are. And that's what makes us who we are. So I did that. And then I knew I wanted to be a coach. However, I wasn't sure what I wanted to coach on. And when Bruce died, that's when I really realized, he never retired. And he had these files. I was the executive of the state that were all about retirement. And I really realized that a lot of us wait for circumstances to change or situations to change and say, well, when this happens, then I can do something that I love. When really life is so short. And that's the gift that Bruce gave me and my children. Life is so short. Let's create a life that we love living now, or at least dream what that would be. Come up with that and start moving towards it. And that's what I do. I host that podcast, which is also a live stream, and then I coach.
Ooh, awesome. And I actually had the privilege of being on Emily's show a couple weeks ago.
Yes. Yes.
And that was an amazing experience too. And I thank you for having me on there. And yeah, so and then you told me you have a couple books out.
Oh
Tell us more
yeah.
about that.
They're not I was a contributing author. This one, okay. I did a little government contracting something. You can see my picture there. This is a book on how to become a government contracting expert and how to accelerate your success in government contracting. And I wrote 3 chapters in it. And one of the chapters was based on discovering who you really are. Because if you want to do business with the federal government or whatever you want to do, sometimes people are like, I want to do business with the government because they think that that's a get rich quick scheme, which it's really not.
Right.
And you have to really love it. So do what you love is one of the chapters I wrote in here.
Right.
So that's a really good book. And then this book. I was a contributing author to it, to step into the spotlight, to expand your influence and attract more clients, or the right, it says the right clients. And there's 12 contributing authors to this. And the back says, have you ever had that thought or feeling like, who wants to listen to me? What value can I bring? Um, and we've all had those thoughts. So this is a really good book too. And you can get them both on, thank you. You can get them both on Amazon.
Sometimes the
Where you get
greatest pain
everything
is
else.
the one at which we keep in silence. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't have to keep silent if we don't want to.
But someone
And
said
I commend you.
stationed
Oh,
at the Pentagon. Yeah. Oh.
yeah, he said stationed at the Pentagon. Woo, their woo-ha or whatever.
Yeah. It
Garen's
was a nice
awesome.
time because I lived in downtown DC. I lived within walking distance of National Stadium. So I could see some of the baseball games. I don't really care for baseball that much, but I could hear them from my porch and from my apartment. And it was a nice place to live for 3 years. But
Awesome.
yeah.
Christine says she's grateful that both of us are courageous, pointing out how complicated our abusive escape route was. Okay, so I shared for the first time on Russ's show today a little bit more. I went a little bit more in depth on Russ's show than I ever have before about my escape route. And it's funny that Christine just said that because I never had shared that. And it's funny. I had all these mental blocks in my head. I had planned to leave after Christmas because he had an 11-year-old. Go figure. I have an 10-year-old now in this relationship, but an 11-year-old back then. And I wanted to wait till after Christmas, but the doors opened for me to do that November 3rd. And so everything that I had, because we had lived in his parents' rental home, and everything was in my name, and I didn't want to be stuck with this if I left, and there's no way I could get it back once I left, because I mean his parents were our landlord, so I knew whose side they were going to be on. um Thank you so much, Stacey. So I had shared that as soon as that door flung wide open for me to leave, it's just like I told him, I said, I wanted a void check. I want it today. I'm going to go down to the utility commission. And if you don't give me the void check, I'm going to have everything shut off. And then you're going to have to pay startup fees again. So what is it going to be? And that was the first time I really had stuck up to him. Well, don't you think I didn't have a void check in my hand 30 minutes later? And I went down to the utility commission the next day, and I had everything switched, and I was out of that house by the end of the week. And I was just like,
Yeah.
after 4 years of putting up with this crap.
I like the comment about plan your escape, because you really do have to plan it, though.
Yes.
So I see my mascara is running. I had to plan my escape, and I did all the finances, and I went to a couple. Had an attorney, and I went to a couple psychiatrists, because the kids had to be seen and to be evaluated as to whether or not they should be, how often they should be with their dad. Because initially, he wasn't granted the typical kind of custody that you would get. So I had to do that, and and one of the psychiatrists recommended that the kids not live too far away from the dad. So, or right around the corner, a house was for rent. So I rented it, and it was rented for 3 months with no one in it, because I was still living in the other house with him. I had to wait, and then he went and saw the psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist told him, "Look, you guys are miserable. Why don't you just get a divorce? Why are you holding out?" That helped. And then he got a new job where he was leading a nationwide team. And I knew the day he was starting and traveling. And so I told him the night before that the movers are coming the next day, and I'm moving down the street. And I was actually scared, because he had guns, and I was scared, but he never did anything to hurt me. And he signed a separation agreement, and he's just like, "Well, you may as well take that, and you can have that." And we told the kids together, and it was okay from there on out. I mean, nothing was really perfect, but
Right.
But I was fortunate that I had the money to rent another house while we still had that mortgage, and that I could leave that way.
And good on you though, because you knew that you needed to keep your kids safe, but you also did it in a way that there was no flare up, I guess,
Hmm.
and because we never know what the spouse's reaction is going to be until things actually happen. So I'm really thankful and glad that that went well for you, because
Oh, my stomach was killing. I was just a ball of nerves.
I can imagine, and yeah. And him being in the army too, you have, he's got his comrades just like you had
Hmm.
yours. And I just can't even imagine. um Talk about the perfect storm.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
like you said, now we're living the life on purpose, and definitely living a life that we want to have daily. And
Yes.
like you said, that's why we're doing these shows.
Hmm.
Number one, to bring awareness. Number two, to bring fun and create fun, because we can talk about these deep dark moments, but for some reason, we always throw an edge of fun or like laughter at least to it.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if you don't laugh, you're gonna cry, honestly.
Yeah.
um at some of the things that we go through, and you're right, it's like, well, why do we go through this? And but I believe we all go through something so that we can help other people. I don't know
Yeah.
about you.
That would definitely, I agree. And my son is 5 years sober, studying engineering in college. He's an awesome dad. I'm just so proud of my kids. We have a really close relationship. I'm close with my daughter. She lives out in Colorado. I want to go visit her in the middle of December. And I want to see Jenny Gold and Alex Chambers when I go out there.
Oh, that'd be
So,
awesome.
yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And I just love my kids so much. And it's something else that makes me, really want to keep exercising and stay strong and stay healthy, because I'm the only parent my kids have left, and so I just want to be there for them.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And that is so awesome. I okay, so now I'm a visual artist. I can't draw, but I visualize a lot of things. So I visualize, the Colorado and the mountains, and you guys having this fun in this cabin with the smoke billowing out,
I don't know
kind of
about
like Little
that.
House
She's
on the
working,
Prairie.
she works in retail, and so I'm still trying to get her schedule so I know when I can go see Jenny and Alex. But I haven't seen her since Christmas last year, so I'm really excited to see her. And just, she lived with me when I was in DC. That was such an interesting time, because she lived with me when she turned 21, and we had these little, we were very close, but we had some of these little disagreements from time to time. Like, she wanted me to be her roommate and not her mom. And I was, I know she was getting older. So, it was fun. We both look back to those times when we lived in Washington, DC, with really good memories. Yeah.
That would be awesome. That's
Yeah.
just like my dad. It ruled with a thumb on us, but then there was also a lot of good times too.
Hmm.
And you could tell like he wanted to be our friend, but you knew he was our father first.
Yeah.
And then,
Right.
also he was there, especially like he's the only guy that would ever listen to me tell all my tales of woe, and at the end of the day. And then yeah, but yeah, it's good that you have that relationship with your kids. That
I'm
is
very
absolutely.
grateful.
Yes. And you still have both your parents too,
Yeah, my
don't they live
parents,
close
they
to you?
live about a mile down the street from me. So that's one of the reasons I retired at 56 or graduated, is because I wanted to have more time with my parents. Because from when I was in college until about 4 years ago, they ran a small hotel. It was like a historic, it was bigger than a bed and breakfast, but in downtown historic Stanton, Virginia. And so whenever I'd go to visit them, I'd have to check into a room. And, at one point they ran a jewelry store too, and then a restaurant. So they're always just really busy. And we never really had a lot of time to spend together and have good conversations. And I just wanted to be able to spend time with them. So I have them over to my condo on Saturday nights, and we have dinner and watch a movie. And then I go over to their place sometimes for dinner, and I go on walks or hikes with my mom. And my mom and I take pottery class together. So we do a lot of fun things together, which is, I'm so
That's
grateful for that.
that
Yeah.
is nice. It's my mom and I were so much alike growing when I was growing up. We would butt heads a lot, like a
Hmm.
lot. But I over the last 10 years, it's gotten better, and the last year especially, and since my dad's died, I wasn't quite sure how it was gonna go. But I mean, she's my mom, and we
Yeah.
got to make sure she's okay, and we promised my dad we'd take care of her, and it's actually been fun. It's just like she messaged me on Friday and said, hey, Harriet and I are going to the bingo hall, you want to go? I'm like, I haven't been to the bingo hall in 15 years. So
It sounds like she's getting out and having fun.
she is, I mean, today was a bad day for her, but I mean, we all have them.
We all
So
have them. I mean, I made
yeah.
a post a while ago that I was sitting in the dentist chair, and the dentist wanted to see a picture of my daughter. So the one that came up was her and her dad. I just started bawling. The dentist felt so bad. I mean, I didn't expect it. So you never know when you're going to have that,
Hmm.
something's going to happen, a song, or like you posted about the other
Exactly.
day. Yeah, you never
Exactly.
know.
And I loved your post. The It was last week, I believe, where you just needed some time for yourself, and you had the bowl of popcorn in your hand, and
Yeah.
you had canceled your appointments, and I just love that because you're right. We are so busy taking care of everybody else. We have our shows. We have. I've got a full time job on top of a lot of other things that I've got going on, and we are just so busy. But sometimes you got to unplug. You know.
Yes, yes. That's what happened is, so one of the areas that I coach in is the area of positive intelligence, which is kind of like understanding how our brain works, and that we have these saboteurs in our minds. But that's not really us. We are really sage. We're really like that innocent person that was born, just as a little child. And then we get all these masks on us, and we have, one of the things in our mind is the judge. The judge is, we all know, our inner critic, right? Judges
Yeah.
ourselves, judges other people, judges situations, and then it will go and recruit some of these other saboteurs. We all have them. There's 9 others. My top ones are hyperachiever, which my saboteur tells me, Emily, just achieve this, then you're going to be happy. And then I get to that, and I never celebrate, used to never celebrate. And then but yeah, but you got to get here. You got to get here. You got to get here. That's why I became like the rank of a 2-star admiral as a civilian, because I just kept going up and up. And then, but another one of mine is restless. I get bored easily and move from project to project. I stay restless so I don't have to feel my feelings. And another one was pleaser. So combine all those, I try to please everybody. And I'm learning to set boundaries. That's one of the areas I coach in. And I realized that Sunday I needed to set a boundary, because I was supposed to drive 2.5, 3 hours to Northern Virginia from where I live. And I was so tired. And I knew that if I did, Interstate 81 is really bad for traffic. And it was the Sunday before Thanksgiving. So I felt bad, because I was also supposed to visit a women's shelter on Monday morning. I was going to go up Sunday night. And I just said, no, I cannot do it. And actually, the more I say no in situations like that, when I really feel it, the easier it gets. Because when you say no to that, you're saying yes to yourself. And people
I love that.
understand. We put a story in our mind. Our saboteurs, our pleaser says, if you don't go to that thing that you said you were going to go to on Sunday night, Emily, that friend PJ, which she's a friend of mine on LinkedIn, is not going to be happy with you. PJ completely understood. So how do you switch? How do you catch yourself with all those lies that we tell ourselves? This is bad. This is terrible. How do we find gifts or opportunities in every situation? How do we switch from beating ourselves up to treating ourselves with self-compassion and others with compassion, and getting curious about, well, what other ways are there to look at this? Because we tend to just look at one way. And how can we be more calm-headed about this and not get hijacked by our saboteurs? That's one of the areas that I coach in, because I went through the program myself, and I learned so much. It really helped me
That's
out a lot.
sounds like an amazing program.
Mhm.
And that's probably why we get along so well, because our saboteurs, I can tell, are just about the
The
same.
same. Other saboteurs are like victim. Oh, this is happening to me again. Or avoider, someone who doesn't want to, or a stickler who's like, you didn't dot that I and cross that T, or hyper rational. So there's other ones too. And just imagine at work in a room where you're having a meeting and all these saboteurs are running around.
Oh
How
gosh.
do teams ever work together? But if we really understood, that's what that coaching program is really good for, parents, for spouses, for teams, leadership teams. It's really good to go through together and understand each other's saboteurs, not to say, ha, I knew you were a controller, not to say that, but to
Mm,
really understand and to help that person see that they've got their hand on the hot stove and they can switch to sage, and then the teams work better together.
right, right. I love that. I so
Mhm.
love that. And you're right. When the more you say no,
Yeah.
the better. Number one, the better it is for yourself, and number two, they learn not to continuously ask you. Right.
Right.
Like
Like
last
what you were
night.
saying earlier about your family coming to you and stuff,
Yeah.
what's
Like
your
last.
role? Whenever something like that happens, we need to look at ourselves. Like, what's my role in this?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, last night was the first time I've ever said no
Hmm. How'd
to
it
this
feel?
particular to this particular person, and actually I felt great. And the more I thought about it, like I was getting more heated up about about what was transpiring behind the scenes behind that, but I was just like, you know what, this feels good. Not my monkey, not my circus.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm waiting for the you know what to hit the fan, and I'm going to step back and I'm going to say, not my monkey, not my circus,
Well,
because it's
yeah.
not.
No, it's not. I had a deputy once that took I bought her a barrel of monkeys because I told her, look, you're stressed because everyone comes into the office, drops their monkey and leaves it. If you could picture your office, it's full of monkeys jumping around. Tell them
Mhm.
to take their monkey, which is their problem, with them, or at
Yeah.
least to come up with some solutions and recommend them. But don't come in here and leave it on my desk. That's what she needed
Yeah.
to do. So I got her a barrel of monkeys to remind her.
I love that analogy. And something that just came to mind, like, I'm not going to get dark and serious here, but when we found out my dad first was diagnosed with cancer, I went very much to pragmatic because that's how I deal with things.
Hmm.
So my first step was, okay, what's the next step? My second thought was, okay, well, you smoked 2 packs a day for 50 years. What did you expect? We all are free to choose, but we don't have free, or we have consequences from our choices. And when I said that to somebody, they looked at me and like, well, that's a little harsh. I said, how do you think I feel? I'm the daughter of somebody who just got diagnosed with stage 3 lung cancer. I can't do anything about it. It was not my decision for him to smoke. What how he decides to cure this is up to him. I have zero control over this. I will
Hmm.
be there for him to the day he dies, but I have zero control. And as a control freak, yes,
Yeah.
I admit it. I'm a control freak in certain situations.
No, what I would
That is
say is
hard.
you have a controller saboteur. So
Yes.
I would change your language, not like say I am, but I have a controller saboteur because deep down you're really sage. So the saboteur is not really part of you when you think of it that way. Like, and then
Right.
think of the lies that controller is telling you, and how can you approach it from your heart?
Hmm.
Because the saboteur is in your head. And
True.
how do you? And I've lived most of my life in my head,
Yeah.
wanting to get to my heart, but not knowing how. I've worked for the past 2 years to learn how to even say my feelings. Like I have a counselor. I have several coaches and I have a counselor and she'll ask, what are you feeling? I'm like, I don't know. I know what I'm thinking. Where do you feel it in your body? I don't know. Why is that even important? But now I get it. And now I can
Yeah.
name my feelings more than happy, sad, glad, or whatever. And I really try to watch my language, and I don't say I am a hyperachiever. I say I have a hyperachiever saboteur. But really I'm a loving sage person. That's how you're born. That's who you really
Yeah.
are.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Did someone in your family or you go to University of Michigan?
No, my husband is a Michigan fanatic.
Oh yeah, well, they won this weekend. My dad went to Michigan. He's so happy.
Okay, so my husband is very much an introvert, and I have asked him several times to come on the show, and as of right now, the answer is always no.
Yeah.
So he's he doesn't like his picture taken. Even I can sneak some once in a while with him and but he doesn't like me posting. Once in a while I'll post, and if I'm in it, he doesn't say too much. So, but the other day he came out. He's had this shirt, Emily, for 2 years, and it says, "Hold on, I gotta get it right because I don't know." It says, "Oh, phones. I don't like phones."
While you're looking for it, let me read this.
It says,
Okay.
"Hey, Ohio State," and it has the middle finger and says, "Love Michigan." And he says, "I've been wanting to wear this shirt for 2 years now." So my coworker went to Ohio State. She was on the hockey team at Ohio State, and so I sent her the picture, and she was laughing. But
It's just a fun rivalry. My parents' neighbors are Ohio State fans, and they put a big shirt, tied it up in their tree, Ohio State tree. And when I got there for dinner the other night after Michigan had won, I texted the neighbor and said, "Get that ugly thing out of my parents' yard."
Emily said that
How
she
we
had family support
support
after she got a police.
survivors.
How can you share how we can support a survivor, or how
I
to
think
ask for how to make the escape?
I think um, let them lead. This is my recommendation, but let them lead the conversation and understand that I think people sometimes go back 7 times before they actually leave. And so you may not understand why they put up with it and why they go back, but I would not recommend shaming them for that. I would just be there when they need you. I mean, don't let them abuse you. Like when I say be there when they need you, if they keep leaving and coming back and wanting thousands of dollars from you, no, I wouldn't do that. There's a fine line between helping and enabling. And I went through that a lot with my son. With some other parents, we started this group called Parents of Teens Unite, and then it's turned into Parents Affected by Addiction. It's a similar thing. What do I do? My son is drinking, and I want to kick him out, but then he's going to be homeless. So it's kind of like a tough love thing, and I think every situation is different. But I think it's just kind of like a coach does. The coach asks empowering questions and helps get the answer out of the client. Because the client already has the answer. So the mom and the dad know, even though like Dorothy might do tough love and kick the person out, and I might say, no, I'm going to let him in my house, but it doesn't mean one's right and one's wrong. But I guess I would just say, so be there, but don't enable. And be there to listen. And you probably are going to feel like, what the heck, this is crazy. She should just leave. But until she realizes until they realize that they need to leave, they're not going to leave. Until my son decided to stop drinking, when this has been on my podcast, he called me one night, and I was supposed to be, I interviewed him on my podcast. It's the most listened to episode that I have. And I was supposed to be in a class for new senior executives. And he called me on Sunday night. The class started Monday. And he said, "Mom, I need help." And I could tell he was really messed up. And I lived about an hour and a half from him. And he had overdosed on cocaine and alcohol and I don't know what else. But I didn't go down to he was 23. I did not leave that class. I stayed in the class, and I did not go down and be with him when he checked himself into the hospital because to detox, because I wanted to send him a signal that I knew he had it. You've got this, Will. Not that I'm not there for him, but you've
Yeah.
got this. And he said in the interview, that was the best decision I ever made. I didn't realize it at the time. His blood alcohol when he went to the hospital and he was fully functioning was 0.39. He should have been dead.
Wow.
And you detox for 4 days, and then he's been sober ever since. But um, I could have gone down and mommy's here and everything, you know. So it's just, I think every situation's different how you handle it, but just don't enable.
Yeah. And if I could add one thing, if it's an abusive relationship that your friend is in, um, do not, do not say anything negative or derogatory towards the abuser,
Yeah.
because that's going to push them even further to them. Don't do that. In your head, you're gonna be like, what the heck are you doing? Like Emily said, like you were gonna have all these thoughts, but it can't come out. And when they're finally ready to escape, then you put the escape plan together. You can help them do that, but only when she pulls the trigger or he pulls the trigger and say, let's go. Because I'm telling you, if you just go ahead and plan it, number one, it's going to backfire on you. Number two, uh, she might not trust you anymore, or
Mm-hmm.
he might not trust you anymore. So yeah,
Yeah,
just
it's kind of like I can say something negative about my mom, but you better not. Right.
exactly.
And so, you know, I could say something negative about Bruce, but as soon as you start saying something, depending on my mood, I may not like that. And it's going to push me back to him. Just like when you have a teenage girl, right? You don't like the boyfriend.
Yeah.
So
Yep. Or
it's
a
tough.
guy that's
It's
guy crazy. Yep. I get
tough.
it. Those teens, gotta love them.
Just let your friend know that you are there for them, not to be walked all over.
Yep. Yeah.
And maybe get some help yourself, a coach or a counselor yourself. And I'm not, you know, I'm not an expert in trauma. I'm only an expert from what I've been through. But yeah.
I had a friend. I won't give names, but her husband had overdosed twice. I was there for her the entire time. I tried my best not to say anything negative about her husband. I did one time, and she let it fluff off. And but I was there. Like she would call me all hours of the night. I was the only friend that would drop off food. Like it got so bad that he would take the last bit of their money and go get alcohol or drugs, and the kids had no food, no cereal, no milk. And I was the only friend that went. I didn't give her money. I went and
Yeah.
got her the
Give her
groceries.
money. Yeah.
I said, give me a grocery list. I'll go get what you need. I'll drop it off at your door, but I'm not giving you money. And, that went on for 2 years. And I was to the point where I was so mentally and emotionally exhausted that I had to end the friendship for a while, because I couldn't take it.
Yeah.
And
You have to
I
set
said,
boundaries.
if your kids need me, tell them to call me, but I can't do it. And it took a while. We're still friends and we still talk, but you have to put that boundary up. And I was no good back then at putting those boundaries up, because I just, especially when it comes to kids and defense, like they weren't asking for this, and so but you have to put that boundary up, because you are enabling if you don't. And like you said, there is a fine line between enabling and helping. And I know I crossed the line in enabling a lot. And would I change it?
Uh,
Probably not. That's who I was. But I know better now.
I used to go and tell my son's friends' parents what my son was. I'm like, well, my son's doing this, so I don't know what your kids are doing, but he was pissed. He'd be pissed at me. But you know, I I didn't. I really had him feel the consequences of his decisions. If you protect them from the consequences of their decisions, they're never really gonna learn.
No, exactly. I totally 100% agree with you.
It's very hard to do. And it's very hard to do when you're a single parent, or even when you're co-parenting or, have a spouse, and it's usually the women are like, oh, my baby. And the men are like, so everyone has a different, the spouses may not be on the same sheet of music. So that's another time that it's really hard. I'm sure I can imagine how hard it was on my mom. I've talked to her. I would call her all the time in tears about Bruce. And I would call Bruce's brother and Bruce's dad. They all knew.
Yeah.
His mom even said, why are you leaving? I put up with it. And I said, because I don't want to be like you. So they all knew, and I'd call in tears. I know I put my mom through hell. And they would tell me I should leave, but I couldn't. I didn't do it on my own terms, I guess.
Yeah. I get it. It's not easy, it's not easy. And then even after I left, like I was second guessing, but I'm like, oh God, no, that's the best thing I could ever have ever done in my life.
I almost got back together with him, and we did take the kids on some trips together. Like we did take the kids to Disney World together after we were divorced. So we tried to do things together as a family. In fact, I've posted a picture of us on LinkedIn, and when that picture was taken, it looks like a nice family picture, but we were divorced.
You probably got along better after you were divorced than when you were married.
Yeah. We did.
Wow. This has been a very enlightening conversation. And I thank all of our guests for being here. We're past the top of the hour. So to be cognizant of your time, I just want to say thank you, Emily, for being on tonight's show. This has been incredible. Like a lot of rich content came out, and I know our viewers were asking a lot of questions, so that's definitely a positive sign. I think our viewers love that, and I just want to thank you for sharing your heart and your stories. And is there any last tips or anything that you'd want to leave our guests with?
I guess I would just say, if you want to connect with me, my website is just Emily Harman, HARMAN.com. And then you can connect with me on LinkedIn. And, I have live shows. I usually go live on Wednesday nights at 7:30 Eastern. I'm actually going live this Wednesday, but I'm also going live tomorrow night. And then I have 2 lives next week, Monday and Wednesday. And then I'm taking some time off. I'm clearing my schedule, taking like about a month off. Because I think it's important to kind of just take some time to refresh, to look at what's working in my life and what's not. Something might have been working for this year, but I might want to go a different direction next year. If we don't set aside that time to really be intentional, not just about work, but about all aspects of our lives. If we don't make that time, then we just kind of go on, I don't know what, memory or, based on our habits. And we're not really stopping and saying, wait, do I really love this? Is this what I love? What else would I love? What else do I want to do and be? How do I want to be? I used to always be like, what do I want to do? One of my guests said, when you do, you turn into do. Well, I did. And so then I told my coach, I just want to be, but I don't even know how to be. And now I do. And it's awesome. So really take some time to, like, we have strategic plans at work, right? Do you have a strategic plan? Do you have a plan for your life? Or are you just going by like, this happened and then that happened and then this happened, and because that happened, I can't do that?
That is awesome, because my coach is constantly telling me, Dorothy, get into receiving mode. Just be.
Yes.
Just be. I'm like, how do you just be? And I'm like, oh, that's how you just be.
Yeah.
She laughs at me all the time. I get it.
Yeah.
Oh, and Ingrid says, great conversation. Thank you.
Ingrid.
And we had to hook up this week. We were supposed to do that already, but we got busy with your Thanksgiving. We got to hook that time up.
Thank you all. Thank you, Dorothy Ann, for having me as your guest.
Oh, thank you. And thank you to our guests for another amazing episode of Unstoppable Overcomers. Next week, I should know who my guest is. I have it all
next week.
I have a guest next week. I just don't remember who it is. Isn't that amazing? And I don't have my calendar
that happened
right
to
beside
Russ
me
today too.
I know. I know. And I'm like,
Look,
I haven't completed one. It's all amazing. All my guests are amazing. Emily's
Yeah.
amazing. It's just I can't remember who next week is, but I will stay tuned.
It'll be an amazing guest. This is challenging. It takes a lot of work to put these together and everything, and
Well,
sometimes
it
the
does.
pieces meld in together.
It does. So you have to have the conversations with the people, which I love. I mean, I'm having conversations anyways.
Yeah.
And, that's how you get to meet so many amazing people. Actually, in January, I have a combat veteran coming on.
Oh, awesome.
I know. And I'm just like, man, this is awesome. Because the military is close to my heart. I have a nephew in the Canadian Armed Forces right now. So excited because he gets to come home for Christmas. So I love those stories. I always cry
Yeah.
when I see a soldier coming home for Christmas,
Mhm.
whether it be U.S. or Canada. And anyway, so yeah, so excited about that. Um, Lots of exciting things happening, and so stay tuned for that. And we will see you next Monday. Yes, Monday. Wow, I really need to go to bed. Night, everybody.
Right.